Have you ever wondered why some people are never chased, yet they are never forgotten? Why their absence creates more impact than another person's constant presence? Why rooms feel different when they leave, conversations lose energy after they disappear, and even those who ignored them begin wondering where they went? Most people believe this kind of influence comes from beauty, status, money, or charisma. But the Stoics saw something far deeper. They understood that true value is never created by trying to become important in the eyes of others. It emerges naturally from mastering yourself so completely that your peace no longer depends on anyone's approval. This is where many people make a painful mistake. They spend years trying to become more attractive to others while neglecting the one person they actually control themselves. They answer every message immediately, explain every decision, seek constant reassurance, and slowly teach the world that their attention is unlimited. Ironically, the more desperately they try to be appreciated, the easier they become to replace. The Stoics would have called this a quiet surrender of freedom. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself that another person's opinion belongs to them, not to you. The moment your happiness becomes dependent upon someone else's recognition, you have handed them authority over your inner life. They may never realize they possess this power, yet you will feel its weight every single day. Real strength begins the moment you reclaim it. Today we will explore 7 Stoic habits that create something far more valuable than admiration. They create respect. They create mystery. They create emotional stability so profound that people begin fearing your absence instead of taking your presence for granted. Not because you manipulate them, not because you play psychological games, but because genuine self-mastery naturally changes the way the world responds to you. The first habit is learning to value your presence before expecting anyone else to value it. This sounds simple, yet it may be the hardest lesson of all. Many people unknowingly communicate desperation through their actions. They constantly make themselves available. They rearrange their priorities to satisfy everyone else's expectations. They apologize for taking up space. They believe sacrifice guarantees affection, but affection earned through self-neglect never lasts. Imagine a river that gives away all its water without replenishing itself. At first, everyone celebrates its generosity. Eventually, the river dries up. The same happens with people who never protect their emotional energy. Epictetus taught that no one can diminish your worth unless you first agree with their judgment. This is an extraordinary realization because it shifts the source of value away from society and back toward character. When you genuinely enjoy your own company, something subtle begins to change. You stop chasing conversations that feel forced. You stop explaining yourself to people determined to misunderstand you. You stop seeking invitations into places where your spirit feels unwelcome. Your silence becomes peaceful rather than lonely. This inner contentment has an unexpected effect. Others begin noticing that your attention is no longer something they automatically receive. Your conversations become more intentional because they are no longer driven by fear of being forgotten. There is a profound difference between isolation and solitude. Isolation says, "No one wants me." Solitude says, "I have learned to enjoy my own mind." The Stoics practiced solitude not because they disliked humanity, but because they refused to become addicted to it. They understood that dependence weakens judgment. Marcus Aurelius spent countless hours reflecting privately, despite carrying the enormous burden of ruling an empire. If the most powerful man in Rome needed silence to preserve clarity, how much more necessary is it for us? People fear losing someone who has already discovered peace within themselves, because such a person cannot be controlled through emotional scarcity. The second habit is speaking less but meaning more. Modern culture rewards constant expression. Everyone is encouraged to broadcast opinions instantly, react immediately, and reveal every thought before it has matured. The Stoics recommended the opposite. They believed words should be like arrows, few, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. Think about the people whose advice genuinely changes your perspective. They rarely dominate every conversation. Instead, they observe carefully before speaking. Their words carry weight precisely because they are not wasted. Excessive talking often comes from anxiety. Silence often comes from confidence. This does not mean becoming cold or distant. It means refusing to fill every uncomfortable pause with unnecessary explanations. How often do people weaken their own position by over-explaining? Someone questions their decision. Instead of calmly stating their reasoning, they spend 10 minutes justifying themselves. Someone misunderstands them. Instead of allowing time to reveal the truth, they desperately chase clarification after clarification. Every unnecessary explanation quietly says, "I need your approval." Epictetus warned that if someone speaks poorly of you, live so well that nobody believes them. Notice what he did not say. He did not advise endless arguments. He did not recommend winning debates. He did not encourage defending every accusation. Character eventually speaks louder than explanation. When you master this habit, people begin listening differently. Your words become anticipated rather than expected. Your opinions become memorable because they are selective. Your presence acquires calm authority. Silence is uncomfortable only for those who fear what it might reveal. For the disciplined mind, silence is simply another form of strength. The third habit is refusing to react emotionally to provocation. Nothing exposes inner weakness faster than predictable reactions. The world quickly learns which buttons to press when every criticism receives immediate anger. Every insult demands retaliation, and every disagreement becomes a personal battle. Stoicism breaks this cycle completely. Imagine two mountains standing beneath the same storm. Lightning strikes, rain falls, violent winds crash against both. One mountain remains exactly where it has always been. The storm eventually passes. The mountain never needed to defeat the weather. It simply refused to become the weather. This is emotional discipline. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that another person's actions reflect their character, not yours. If someone insults you, they reveal something about themselves before revealing anything about you. If someone lies about you, they expose their own integrity. If someone tries to provoke you into anger, they are offering an invitation. You are under no obligation to accept it. This habit creates extraordinary psychological freedom. Instead of asking, "How do I make them stop?" you begin asking, "Why should I surrender my peace because another person lacks theirs?" There is immense power in becoming emotionally unpredictable, not through manipulation, but through stability. People eventually stop attempting to disturb someone who refuses to become disturbed. Imagine throwing stones into a deep lake. Small ponds splash violently. Deep lakes barely acknowledge the impact. Depth creates calm. This is why emotional maturity often appears intimidating. Not because it is aggressive, because it is unmovable. The fourth habit is becoming devoted to purpose instead of attention. One of the greatest traps of modern life is confusing visibility with significance. People become obsessed with being noticed. They measure success by reactions instead of progress. Every achievement becomes another performance seeking applause. The Stoics rejected this entirely. They believed the quality of your work mattered infinitely more than the audience watching it. Seneca observed that those who seek public admiration often become servants of public opinion. Think about that carefully. The person chasing approval cannot make independent decisions. Every action must first pass through the imagined judgment of strangers. This is invisible slavery. Purpose frees you from it. When your mission becomes larger than your desire for recognition, distractions begin losing their power. Criticism hurts less. Praise intoxicates less. Comparison fades. Your energy returns to the work itself. People begin noticing something unusual. You are no longer competing for attention. You are building something meaningful. Ironically, This often attracts far more respect than constant self-promotion ever could. There is an ancient story about a sculptor who spent decades carving statues that would be placed high upon temple rooftops, where almost nobody would ever see the intricate details. Someone asked why he worked so carefully if the carvings would remain invisible. The sculptor answered simply, "The gods will see." Whether historically accurate or symbolic, the lesson remains timeless. Do excellent work, because excellence shapes you. Recognition is merely a possible consequence. Character is the guaranteed reward. People fear losing those whose lives revolve around purpose, because purpose creates independence. Such individuals cannot be distracted by every emotional impulse. They have somewhere more important to place their attention. The fifth habit is accepting loss without losing yourself. This may be the most difficult Stoic lesson of all. Everyone loses something. Relationships end. Friends drift away. Careers collapse. Health changes. Fortunes disappear. No philosophy can prevent these realities. Stoicism offers something better. It teaches that while loss is unavoidable, self-destruction is optional. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that everything borrowed from life eventually returns to life. If someone insults you, they reveal something about themselves before revealing anything about you. If someone lies about you, they expose their own integrity. If someone tries to provoke you into anger, they are offering an invitation. You are under no obligation to accept it. This habit creates extraordinary psychological freedom. Instead of asking, "How do I make them stop?" you begin asking, "Why should I surrender my peace because another person lacks theirs?" There is immense power in becoming emotionally unpredictable, not through manipulation, but through stability. People eventually stop attempting to disturb someone who refuses to become disturbed. Imagine throwing stones into a deep lake. Small ponds splash violently. Deep lakes barely acknowledge the impact. Depth creates calm. This is why emotional maturity often appears intimidating. Not because it is aggressive, because it is unmovable. The fourth habit is becoming devoted to purpose instead of attention. One of the greatest traps of modern life is confusing visibility with significance. People become obsessed with being noticed. They measure success by reactions instead of progress. Every achievement becomes another performance seeking applause. The Stoics rejected this entirely. They believed the quality of your work mattered infinitely more than the audience watching it. Seneca observed that those who seek public admiration often become servants of public opinion. Think about that carefully. The person chasing approval cannot make independent decisions. Every action must first pass through the imagined judgment of strangers. This is invisible slavery. Purpose frees you from it. When your mission becomes larger than your desire for recognition, distractions begin losing their power. Criticism hurts less. Praise intoxicates less. Comparison fades. Your energy returns to the work itself. People begin noticing something unusual. You are no longer competing for attention. You are building something meaningful. Ironically, this often attracts far more respect than constant self-promotion ever could. There is an ancient story about a sculptor who spent decades carving statues that would be placed high upon temple rooftops, where almost nobody would ever see the intricate details. Someone asked why he worked so carefully if the carvings would remain invisible. The sculptor answered simply, "The gods will see." Whether historically accurate or symbolic, the lesson remains timeless. Do excellent work, because excellence shapes you. Recognition is merely a possible consequence. Character is the guaranteed reward. People fear losing those whose lives revolve around purpose, because purpose creates independence. Such individuals cannot be distracted by every emotional impulse. They have somewhere more important to place their attention. The fifth habit is accepting loss without losing yourself. This may be the most difficult Stoic lesson of all. Everyone loses something. Relationships end. Friends drift away. Careers collapse. Health changes. Fortunes disappear. No philosophy can prevent these realities. Stoicism offers something better. It teaches that while loss is unavoidable, self-destruction is optional. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that everything borrowed from life eventually returns to life. Nothing external truly belongs to us forever. This perspective is not pessimistic. It is liberating. When you stop believing that your identity depends upon possessions, relationships, or circumstances, you become astonishingly resilient. Imagine holding sand in your hand. Grip it desperately, and it escapes between your fingers. Hold it gently, and it remains much longer. Attachment often destroys what appreciation preserves. People who recover gracefully from disappointment possess rare strength. They grieve honestly. They learn sincerely. Then they continue, walking without bitterness, without revenge, without allowing one chapter to define the entire story of their lives. Others notice this resilience immediately. Why? Because most people secretly fear that one devastating event would permanently break them. Meeting someone who has survived heartbreak without becoming cynical, failure without surrendering ambition, betrayal without abandoning kindness, reminds them that another way of living is possible. That kind of strength cannot be purchased. It can only be forged, and anything forged through suffering carries a quiet authority impossible to imitate. There is a saying that storms reveal the strength of roots, invisible beneath the ground. Character works exactly the same way. You rarely recognize its depth until adversity arrives. Those who emerge from hardship with wisdom instead of resentment become unforgettable. Not because they avoided pain, because pain failed to conquer them. People often assume that becoming unforgettable requires making yourself impossible to ignore. The Stoics reached the opposite conclusion. They discovered that the people who leave the deepest mark on the world are often those who are least concerned with leaving one at all. They devote themselves so completely to living with integrity. That influence becomes a natural consequence rather than an exhausting pursuit. This brings us to the sixth habit, mastering the discipline of strategic absence. Most people underestimate the value of stepping away. They believe they must always be available, always responding, always participating, always proving they care. They fear that if they become less visible, they will become less important. Yet constant availability often produces the exact opposite effect. What is always present gradually becomes invisible. The Stoics understood the rhythm of engagement and withdrawal. They knew that a disciplined mind requires periods of silence just as the body requires sleep. Without distance, there is no perspective. Without stillness, there is no clarity. Imagine a master blacksmith forging a sword. He does not leave the steel endlessly inside the fire. He heats it, removes it, shapes it, cools it, and then returns it to the flames. Strength is created through rhythm, not constant exposure. Human beings are no different. If every moment of your life is accessible to everyone around you, you slowly lose something precious. Your attention becomes fragmented. Your priorities become negotiable. Your identity begins revolving around other people's expectations rather than your own convictions. Strategic absence is not punishment. It is not manipulation. It is not pretending not to care. It is the conscious decision to protect the conditions necessary for becoming your strongest self. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly withdrew into reflection even while surrounded by the responsibilities of an empire. He famously reminded himself that nowhere can a person find a quieter refuge than within their own soul. Think about that for a moment. He did not wait for perfect circumstances. He did not need a mountain retreat or a distant monastery. He carried his sanctuary within himself. That is the essence of Stoic independence. When you occasionally disappear, not to create anxiety in others, but to cultivate wisdom within yourself, you return with something far more valuable than constant availability. You return with greater patience, greater discipline, greater emotional balance, greater insight. People notice the difference. They begin realizing that your time is directed by purpose rather than impulse. Your attention is no longer something distributed carelessly. It has become intentional. And intentional attention is deeply valuable because it cannot be purchased or demanded. There is another reason this habit carries such power. Absence reveals truth. When you stop initiating every conversation, you discover who genuinely wishes to speak with you. When you stop solving everyone's problems, you discover who valued you only for your usefulness. When you stop chasing approval, you discover who appreciated your character rather than your compliance. Many fear this discovery because it may expose uncomfortable realities. The Stoic welcomes it. Truth is always preferable to illusion. Better to see relationships as they truly are than to maintain comforting fantasies through endless effort. Epictetus insisted that freedom begins the moment we stop trying to control what never belonged to us in the first place. Other people's affection, loyalty, gratitude, and attention all remain outside our complete control. We may influence them through our character, but we cannot possess them. This realization transforms absence from something frightening into something peaceful. If someone values you, distance will not erase genuine respect. If they never valued you deeply, constant presence would not have created it anyway. The energy once spent chasing certainty can now be invested in becoming a wiser human being. Paradoxically, this often strengthens relationships rather than weakening them. People appreciate what arrives with intention. They treasure conversations that emerge from genuine interest rather than obligation. Your presence begins feeling like a gift instead of an expectation. And when people experience that difference, they naturally begin fearing its loss. Not because you demanded importance, because your presence consistently brought peace rather than pressure. The seventh and final habit is becoming impossible to manipulate because your identity is anchored in virtue. Every society offers countless temptations. Some tempt you with praise, others tempt you with fear. Some promise acceptance if you abandon your principles. Others threaten rejection if you refuse. Most people spend their lives moving back and forth between these invisible forces, adjusting their personalities according to whoever stands before them. The Stoics considered this one of the greatest forms of inner captivity. If compliments determine your confidence, criticism will eventually destroy it. If popularity determines your decisions, loneliness will eventually terrify you. If external success determines your worth, failure will eventually convince you that you have no value. But virtue changes everything. For the Stoics, virtue was not merely behaving politely. It was the unwavering commitment to wisdom, courage, justice, and self-control, regardless of circumstances. These qualities could not be stolen. They could not be purchased. They could not be granted by society or taken away by enemies. They belonged entirely to the individual willing to cultivate them. Imagine constructing a house upon solid stone rather than shifting sand. Storms still arrive. Rain still falls. Winds still howl. Yet the foundation remains. This is what happens when identity rests upon character rather than reputation. Someone insults you, you examine whether the criticism is true. If it is true, you improve. If it is false, you remain calm. Either way, your peace survives. Someone praises you extravagantly. You appreciate the kindness without allowing it to redefine your self-worth. Someone excludes you. You continue living according to your principles rather than begging for acceptance. Someone betrays your trust. You respond with wisdom instead of becoming consumed by vengeance. Notice the pattern. Every situation becomes another opportunity to practice virtue instead of another emotional emergency. This is why Stoic discipline appears almost mysterious to those unfamiliar with it. Observers expect dramatic reactions. Instead, they encounter consistency. They expect insecurity. Instead, they find quiet confidence. They expect emotional chaos. Instead, they discover remarkable composure. Consistency is one of the rarest qualities in human nature. Most people are kind when life is easy, patient when everything goes according to plan, generous when abundance surrounds them. The Stoic strives to remain guided by principle regardless of changing conditions. This reliability creates profound trust. People know where they stand with you because your values are not constantly changing. Your words align with your actions. Your promises carry weight. Your decisions reflect conviction rather than convenience. Such people become extraordinarily difficult to replace, not because they possess extraordinary talents, not because they seek admiration, but because integrity has become woven into every part of their lives. In a world overflowing with performance, authenticity becomes unforgettable. In a culture obsessed with appearances, substance becomes magnetic. In an age where emotions frequently dictate behavior, disciplined character quietly stands apart. Now consider these 7 habits together. Valuing your own presence, speaking with deliberate purpose, remaining calm under provocation, choosing purpose over attention, accepting loss without losing yourself, practicing strategic absence, anchoring your identity in virtue. Notice what they all share. None of them require controlling another person. None depend upon manipulation. None involve convincing others to admire you. Every single habit begins with mastering yourself. That is why Stoicism remains as powerful today as it was thousands of years ago. It does not promise that everyone will love you. It does not guarantee that no one will leave. It does not eliminate disappointment, criticism, loneliness, or failure. Instead, it offers something infinitely more valuable. It teaches you how to become the kind of person who remains whole regardless of what the world decides. And there is a remarkable irony hidden within this truth. The less desperately you seek to become unforgettable, the more unforgettable you become. The less you cling to people, the more freely they choose to remain. The less your happiness depends upon external validation, the more naturally your confidence inspires respect. People do not fear losing someone because that person constantly demands attention. They fear losing someone whose presence consistently reflects wisdom, steadiness, integrity, and peace. Such qualities are increasingly rare. They cannot be manufactured overnight. They are built through countless quiet decisions made when nobody is watching. Each moment you choose discipline over impulse. Each moment you choose silence over needless argument. Each moment you choose courage over comfort. Each moment you choose virtue over approval. These are the moments that shape a life. Marcus Aurelius wrote his reflections not for applause but to remind himself how to live. He understood that the greatest battle is not against critics, rivals, or changing circumstances. It is against the weaknesses within our own minds. Win that battle consistently, and something extraordinary happens. You no longer spend your days wondering who values you. You become someone whose value is rooted so deeply in character that external recognition becomes a pleasant addition rather than a desperate necessity. And that is the quiet secret the Stoics understood all along. The people whose absence is most deeply felt are rarely those who tried hardest to be noticed. They are the ones who spent their lives becoming worthy of remembrance through unwavering character. So ask yourself one final question. If everything external disappeared tomorrow, every compliment, every possession, every title, every audience, what would remain? The Stoics believe that whatever survives that question is your true wealth. Protect it. Strengthen it. Live by it. Because when your character becomes your greatest possession, there is nothing the world can truly take from you. And once you reach that point, you no longer need people to fear losing you. You have already found something far greater. You have found yourself.